45Z legislation, regulation, and tax policy that can help you as a farmer make money. It's a very important thing, especially in a tighter farm economy. This is a topic that I've been wanting to cover for a long time, and we're going to do it right here from the floor of Commodity Classic San Antonio 2026.
You ready for a conversation with some real farmers about real issues? And the best part, you're invited. So pour yourself a drink, grab a snack, most importantly, pull up a chair. Welcome to the Granary. Hey guys.
I'm in the XtremeAg booth, giving you a bonus version of the Granary. As you know, this normally comes from my farm, De La Rosa Farms in Huntington, Indiana. We decided to pack up the table and bring it to San Antonio. And we're bringing a topic to you, as well as a live audience right here on the floor. And we're going to make this as informative as possible because we want you to profit. As it turns out, we might be in margins that are basically break even on your grain crop. But what if you can then get more margin by benefiting from these programs? I'm surrounded with an all-star panel on this topic about biofuels and profiting from it. Mike Busing right here, company called Regenerative Roots. He's an ag retailer in Iowa. He also has a farm background, and his business moving forward, and already has been, is signing up acres. If you are a farming operator and you say, I want to get my acres signed up, but you can't go directly to the company, you're going to do this through an assembler, if you will. That's what he does. Kelly Garrett, an Iowa farmer and a founder of XtremeAg, one of the very first people to get on this. 4.5 years ago, almost 5 years ago, I picked up the Wall Street Journal and I saw a cover story about a farmer in Iowa who is profiting off of carbon programs. I called him up, looked him up, or as he says, Facebook stalked him, and said, hey, you know what? I've been hearing about indigo for a long, long time. I've been hearing about these programs for a long time, but you know what? I don't know any farm that's actually making money on it, and that's how this connection develops. We're joined then also with Kurt Kovarik. Kurt Kovarik is with Clean Fuels Alliance America. As it turns out, they have a booth here at Commodity Classic, and so we have him for the regulation, the legislation, and the timetable, the Washington expertise, or shall I say, connection. So Kurt Kovarik, Kelly Garrett, Mike Busing, me, Damian Mason, coming at you from Commodity Classic. You heard everything I had to say there. I think we start with you. This has been talked about for a while, and it's got a lot of ambiguity. There's a bit of confusion. These farmers are out here. They're a little bit, let's face it, stressed because we're in a real break-even or even worse than break-even situation. This has the promise. It holds the promise for a chance to have an alternative revenue source. So give us timetable, background, and then obviously we'll talk about moving forward.
Yeah, sure. Appreciate that. I'm going to give you a little bit of history here. So if you look back since 2005, there's been a blender's tax credit available for biomass-based diesel. It was available to the blending of the fuel. In 2022, when the Democrats had control of the full government, when they passed the Inflation Reduction Act, they created for the first time ever a technology-neutral, clean fuel tax policy. We call it 45Z. It's named after the section of the tax code. It's called the Clean Fuel Production Credit. Technology neutral, it's available to all fuels and all feedstocks. The credit value is based on the carbon intensity of the fuel as compared to the baseline petroleum. So it was enacted in 2022. The Biden administration left town essentially January 10th of 2025 was the only time that they provided any guidance as to how this tax credit was going to work. It really didn't help the industry much in terms of determining how to claim the credit. Then in the summer of 2025, Congress passed the One Big Beautiful Bill that both enhanced 45Z and extended it. So when all of the other clean energy credits were under pressure to be phased out early or terminated, because we had the support of the ag industry and the biofuels industry, we actually were able to extend that clean fuels production credit for 2 additional years through 2029. And when I say enhancement, we were able to eliminate what's called indirect land use penalties that are applied to U.S. farm production, penalizing a U.S. farmer for activity that's taking place in Brazil or Argentina or somewhere else around the globe. It had the benefit of improving and increasing the value of that credit. But at the end of the day, where we are right now, Treasury just issued guidance on early February, proposed guidance that goes a long way to addressing all of the questions that we had with this tax credit of how it was going to work, what the value is going to be. It's all based on carbon intensity, which is the complexity to this. Argonne National Laboratory under the Department of Energy has what they call the GREET model that scores all of the processes, the inputs, the direct, indirect emissions, What we're hoping for, they did not finalize, is USDA has been working on the RegenAg component of this. They proposed regulations, they took comments, they have not finalized it. This Treasury proposal, what it does is very importantly signals when USDA finishes their work, it's going to feed into the GREET model, and farmers are going to get credit for the on-farm practices that they're doing to reduce the carbon intensity of the feedstock.
It's important to tell the viewer of this, we are recording on February 26th of 2026. If you watch this 6 weeks from now, there might be some movement on this. So let's talk about, and when we get to these guys, Kurt, the movement on this. What are we talking about? Because it's still ambiguous, and there's a lot of questions out here. These producers need to know what would you think right now? Where do we go? What should we be doing to prepare right now?
Yeah. Well, it's a good question. Unfortunately, there's not a great deal of clarity to it. I can tell you the timeline of when we expect to see finality on a couple of these things. So the pros regs came out early February. I think it was February 6th for 60-day comment period. So that closes on April 6th. USDA, they may take another month or 2 or 3 to finish their work on the RegenAg. When that's finished, that'll feed then into Department of Energy's Argonne GREET model, which will then update the carbon intensity scores for our producers. In order to calculate that credit, we'll at that point in time look through the data set, put in their inputs, and it will hopefully incorporate what's happening on the farm so that at the end of the day, the feedstock that feeds into one of my biodiesel producer members, they're going to get a higher credit value for the fuel based on the carbon intensity, and that will incorporate the practices on the farm. So the theory is that the farmer will indirectly benefit from a higher value of that commodity because it's got a lower carbon intensity score and adds more value to the biodiesel producer through the 45Z clean fuel production credit.
Got it.
Timing, comment period closes April 6th. They may finalize this sometime late summer, early fall at Treasury, but I think we'll see the finalization of the concept from USDA earlier than that and incorporation of GREET by probably this summer.
Okay, now here's the thing. If it's not done until summer and I'm selling corn to the ethanol plant today, delivery on April 1st, whatever that should be, it's not retroactive. I'm not getting any money back for what I sold them a month or 3 months or 6 months ago.
Well, interesting component to this, which is uncommon in Treasury guidance, they actually said that when USDA finishes their work and incorporates into the GREET model, they're going to apply it to activity that took place in 2025. Now, I don't know exactly how that's going to work. That's, I think, the marketplace to kind of shake that out. Or these fellas here are going to help the farmers understand that and the biofuel producers understand exactly how that's going to work.
All right, let's kick the ball over here to Kelly. And I got a lot of questions. I'm sure our audience does as well. But remember, we're playing to our TV crowd right now. What are you doing? Because, I mean, you got to do everything you can anyway to do farming the right way. But then you've got this thing hanging out here that could really be a nice bonus, not just a cherry on the top. This could be, for a larger scale farmer, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
It could. It's 2 cents a gallon per point, and that translates to 5.5 cents per bushel with the accepted science of 2.75 gallons per bushel. And, the average CI score of corn in the United States is 29. And so if you can lower your score to, if you're average, you can lower your score to 19, that's 55 cents a bushel that the ethanol plant is receiving. 55, it's 5.5 cents a point. So the lower you can make your score, the bigger the bonus you're going to get. But again, with the lack of clarification, we don't know what portion the farmer's going to get is the problem or what we're waiting for. With the practices that we're having on the farm and things like that, I would say what a farmer needs to do right now is educate yourself on what your CI score is. I wouldn't spend money to get it yet, but there's free calculators out there to get a general idea. So get a general idea what your score is and get a general idea the changes you need to make on your farm to improve your score.
And the person that's sitting here watching it on our video or here live is saying CI, carbon intensity score. And they're saying, I don't even know what mine is. Who does that? How do I get that?
ARVA has programs. BASF has programs. I think John Deere has a program. Iowa State has a program.
Am I in bed with them once I do that, Kelly? If I go and say, I just want my carbon intensity score, is it like getting my credit score? Once I get it, then I can do whatever I want with
No,
it?
these are all free calculators that you can use. At some point, when the program comes out, I believe you will have to get in bed with somebody and you will have to pay to be certified field by field. But what I'm talking about is a general idea of just your general farming practices and getting an idea. Like I've gone through the calculator and I know what my on-farm average is roughly, but I don't know field by field yet. Different fields are going to have different scores.
Okay, Mike Busing, what are you counseling? You're in Iowa, but it doesn't matter. You work with clientele in different areas, Indiana, wherever they grow corn, presumably, or soy. What are you telling people right now? They call you and they say, I want to do this. What do you do? Give me some steps.
All right, so the first thing, go to XtremeAg.farm, and there's a link there that you can click on. Sign up, give us all your information, name, farm, how many acres, where you're at, because how I see this going with 45Z is the ethanol plants are going to have to pair with a third-party data verifier, so to speak. And so our firm has paired with a national sustainability company, and what we need to do is when they get this thing online, we can go direct to our database and we say, okay, these growers are in this area of this plant, and then we can reach out to you.
Okay, so the big thing here is there's the ethanol company, plant, and then between them and the farmer is ARVA. And explain what ARVA, using your example, is. There are a number of them. Explain what they do, and then kind of go through the integration, if you will.
Yeah, so ARVA is basically the technology platform, right? They're the ones that are going to calculate CI and get it into a form that the ethanol plant needs to achieve the tax credit.
Okay.
So, and why you've got to have a third-party verifier is it all goes back to tax code. So we can't just have farmers just bringing in a CI.
Yeah, it's not just USDA. It's not like the elevator and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Now you're talking about the IRS and the provider of the service, the ARVA of the, if you will.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
Okay, so that the people that are watching or that are here right now, what they need to do is understand their carbon intensity score first. Secondly, they can't go to ARVA. No. They got to go to somebody like you that is the assembler, if you will, of, okay, they need 300,000 acres in northern Indiana, right? Yep. And they say, we need 300,000 acres in northern Indiana that have this amount of carbon intensity, and they give you the parameters?
So we're gonna work direct with the farmer. So think of us as the easy button for the farmer. So what we historically do is we pair farmers with sustainability programs all across the nation. So we hold the farmer's hand. We gather all the necessary data, import field boundaries, all of that. We do all the back and forth with the farmer, and ARVA or whoever it may be, and to make it easy for the farmer. Right.
Okay.
You guys have
so
got
they sign up with you, not knowing for sure if they're going to get sold into these potential plans, or is that where do we see? How does the structure work?
So basically, when you sign up with us, you're just getting into our database. So we're not tying you to anything right now.
Right.
Basically, just you're on a list and you're prepared. You're ready. So a lot of these things we're waiting on the government, but when they say it's time to go, we're going to have to go in a rapid fashion.
Yeah. So, Kurt, back to you. This is great. There's going to be a tax credit program for ethanol producers.
Ethanol biodiesel.
Ethanol biodiesel. That's right. Soy biodiesel.
That's right.
Biodiesel, which is all biofuels. Why would they give that money? They have a tax credit. Like you said, ADM, one of the Bunge, Archer-Daniels-Midland, Bunge, Cargill, Dreyfus, any of the four big. Why don't they just keep it? Why would the money come back to any of these guys? Or you want to go to that first? Yeah. Tell me why, if I get a couple $100 million, if I get $100 million of tax credit through the tax proposal of 45Z, why am I incentivized to give it to Kelly Garrett?
They can't get it. The ethanol plant cannot get it without our traceability. The ethanol plant right now has to use the Department of the government's average, which is 29.1. And unless they have the traceability of our bushels, they cannot lower their score. The average score ethanol was 53 in the United States, I believe, and it's 2 cents. Is it 53, right?
Yeah, they've got it.
They got to get below 50. The ethanol plant, to get this tax credit, it's 2 cents a gallon per point for every point below 50, and the national average is 53. The national average on corn is 29. For an ethanol plant to lower their score, they need our scores, because otherwise they're just using the government average. So the ethanol plant very much needs to be partners with farmers if they want to get this.
Yeah, and I think some plants, we'll see how this pays out, but I think depending on the plant, you're going to see a different, payment back to the farmer, right? Because some plants are more efficient than others. So we'll see how that plays out as well.
I think I would just add, it's going to be in the fuel producer's interest to maximize the credit value, right? And in order to do that, they're going to have to demonstrate that they're getting value out of the on-farm practices. Well, the farmer isn't going to take those extra steps if they're not being rewarded by whoever is buying their feedstock. So I think there's going to have to be a natural trickle-down effect that occurs. Otherwise, a farmer's not going to take that risk and add that additional capital to undertake these conservation practices if they're not being rewarded by the biofuel producer.
One thing to add on that, the reason I like 45Z is in a traditional sustainability program, going back to carbon credits or whatever, you had to make a change to do whatever. 45Z, it's great for all farmers, because you're going to be scored based upon what you're doing today. Now, there's ways to improve your score, to lower your CI score, but this is a everybody can play thing.
Okay, that's the other thing I was going to do. What do you think is going to be incumbent upon the farmer, the person who's standing out here that says, I've already got my CI score? My friend John over here from Indiana, very progressive like all of us Indiana producers are. I think I speak for all Indiana producers when I say that. Very progressive, forward-thinking, definitely top of the curve, front end. Anyway, he's already got this kind of figured out, but other folks don't. Maybe they need to know, what do I do? What's incumbent upon me to, besides I get the score, now how do I make it so I can make money? What do I got to do? Do I have to go out here and start hugging trees and, wearing Birkenstocks?
No, I don't think so. No-till, cover crops, alternative forms of fertilizer. You need to play with that calculators, the calculators that we mentioned, and put in your score or figure out your score, and then change some of the practices on that calculator and see how it changes your score.
So if I put in cover crops, I do my reduced tillage, strip tillage, those kind of things. Who monitors this?
The government.
Yeah,
so
it's all based upon the GREET model.
Yeah, but I'm saying there's already. There's going to be a great deal of skepticism. Does that mean that I'm getting flyovers? Am I going to get? Who's really monitoring? I guess is one of our questions.
Well, we as farmers don't want to be monitored, but let's look at what's possible here. If you lower your score from a 29.1 down to a 0, you're talking $1.60 a bushel credit to the ethanol plant. And we still don't know what the ethanol plants are going to give us, but if they give us half, you're talking 80 cents.
80 cents.
That's $160 an acre on 200 bushel corn.
Yeah.
I have no idea. What if they give us 50 cents?
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? There's $100 an acre on a 200.
Let's talk about money. Where do you see?
So yeah, there's probably going to be some monitoring, and there should be for that kind of money.
Going, Mr. Busing?
Once again, we're relying on the government on this, but I think there will be some legs on this.
Yeah.
And back real quick on who's monitoring this. That's why we've got to have third-party verifiers, right? And so farmers are probably going to have to. If you say use a nitrogen stabilizer, we may have to have an invoice for that, right?
And that's where your company.
Yeah. So
you're going to then show the paper trail that says I've got the invoice and I did this.
You're absolutely correct. So not to go backwards, but
I was going to ask on how much money. You said, what if it is 50 cents a bushel or 30 cents a bushel or 25 cents a bushel?
I believe there's potential for that if you can get your score to a 0.
You get asked a lot of questions. What thing is it that you think is most misunderstood that you can, Kurt Kovarik with Clean Fuels Alliance America, give the ray of sunshine right now?
Well, I think the biggest piece of optimism that we have right now is the fact that it was extended through 2029 by Congress, so there's some degree of longevity to it or certainty to it. It's got strong buy-in. It was created by Democrats in 2022. It was extended by purely Republican partisan.
So you're feeling good about the bipartisan aspect of it.
And it's got buy-in from all the feedstocks and all the fuels. Whereas before we had the biodiesel blenders tax credit, which was great for biodiesel producers, ethanol lost their tax credit in 2012. So you have all the stakeholders at the table. So
Do you see it being beneficial on an equal level to both corn and soy?
Well, I think a lot of that's going to shake out probably with what USDA does in terms of the ability for each of those two crops to lower their CI and capture more value.
We have almost 200 ethanol plants in the United States of America. We don't have that many biodiesel plants, so it should probably end up being more beneficial to ethanol just based on infrastructure, I think.
Yeah, and I think one bit of caution that I would say is it will have to be renewed after 2029. And one thing government looks at is, well, what's our track record? What has the cost been to the federal treasury of this program? So, this was put together by a lot of scientists and Hill staffers and folks with input from USDA. You think you have a good idea of what the credit value is going to be and what the on-farm modifications are going to lead to. If that goes significantly larger than maybe we thought it was, that could have a negative consequence for Congress when they're coming around to renewing this.
Obviously, you're on the side of being in Washington, D.C. We have tremendous backing from industry. That's why you've got a job out there. You're out here making sure this happens. Is there any pessimism on your part? Be honest.
Well, I'll say this. The policy was crafted by folks who don't love crop-based biofuels, right? The first folks who put it into place in 2022, it's the reason they got away from fuel-specific tax credits and focused it on carbon intensity so that they get the largest benefit in terms of carbon. Every time the government switches back, their motivation may be, we got some improvements, like I mentioned, the elimination of ILUC, the indirect land use penalty. That may come back. If Democrats are back in power, they may say, hey, wait a minute, that's critically important to us to making sure that we're not causing harm around the globe. Now, we strongly disagree with that theory,
right.
But that's the threat is it achieving the results that the folks want? If it's not, how do they plan to tinker with the program to get those results?
Because right now we're good to 2029, but here we are at 2026. I mean, this is not, you're not setting up your next generation on this based on this right now. But also renewable fuel standard came in 2004. And here we are 22 years later.
Renewable fuel standard was basically put on autopilot. When it was created, it didn't have an end date. Tax policies always have an end. If they're not, unless they're permanent,
right,
they have an end date. So it means that we're going to have to go up to the Hill probably pretty soon and start advocating for an extension.
Where do you see things going? I mean, because we're going to wrap this show and we're going to hear the questions from the live audience. I think that there's a lot of optimism, but there's still just, here we are.
There's a tremendous amount of optimism. I'm very excited, but I'd really like to see what portion is the ethanol plant going to give the farmers. That's where I'm interested. What part's going to be passed on here?
And the other part that a lot of folks are probably wondering, well, why is an ethanol plant need that many tax credits? And not to get too into derivatives and Wall Street lingo here, we made that tax credit, the government made that tax credit marketable. So in other words, if you have $100 million of tax credits, they could sell it, Kurt, for $92 million. If they have $100 million of tax credit, they can just sell it for $92 million as actually a marketable piece of paper to someone that needs it, that owes a bunch of taxes and wants that credit.
Critically important in the legislation was the ability to transfer the tax credit. Transferability is what we call it. So you're exactly right. A lot of the biodiesel plants don't have the tax liability to monetize or capture the value. So right now, because
they could sell it to Tesla because Tesla owes a bunch of taxes, and all of a sudden he buys that tax credit and he buys it at a discount, and then obviously profits from that. Go, Mike.
And I think that's the wild thing about this, and I think you're going to see variability across the nation between different plants. How hungry is your plant to achieve the tax credit, right? If
so, it becomes a little bit like basis. It becomes a little bit like, I don't need soybeans right now, so I'm not paying nothing for them. But
maybe you've got a poet plant that's really close to achieving the tax credit already, and maybe they can make some plant efficiencies and use a little bit of low CI grain to achieve the tax credit. So they're probably not going to pay a large portion to the farmer because they're very close, right? If you've got another plant that is not very close to achieving the tax credit at all, they may hustle their tail off and pay a pile of money to the farmer because there's a greater benefit there for them.
All right, so last thought to the person that's is watching this video. Granted, we record this on February 26th. Get your carbon intensity score, figure it out. Get in line to do this and figure out what you can do. Then probably find a market. Anything else?
No, that's exactly right. You get a general idea what your score is, get a general idea what it would take to lower your score if you'd like to, and then just,
And maybe get the database for somebody like,
Yes,
it doesn't have
you
to be
know.
your company. There are companies that are coming up to do exactly what he's talking about. Handle the paperwork and getting the database of farm acres signed up, that then when it's a go, you said the green light's going to come and it's going to be like a drag race.
That's the way it always is with this sustainability stuff. I mean, we're always behind the 8 ball. So be prepared. Farmers, some of them are fantastic at keeping records.
Yep.
Some of them are not great.
Yeah.
Start to get your stuff in order.
Got it. His name's Mike Busing. He's with Renewable Roots, and you can sign up if you want to at XtremeAg.farm. Kelly Garrett, founder of XtremeAg. Go to XtremeAg.farm if you want to get signed up, and you can at least start getting in the database. Do get your carbon intensity score figured out. Maybe you've already done that. If you're like my friend over here, John, very progressive, those Indiana people. Also, his name's Kurt Kovarik with Clean Fuels Alliance America. If you want to learn more from their angle, I assume we can find Clean Fuels Alliance America online. All right. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Granary, and we very much appreciate you joining us here from the Commodity Classic at the XtremeAg booth. Share this with somebody who can benefit from it. And remember, there's so much library of information at the XtremeAg.farm, also on our YouTube channel, on Twitter, on Facebook. Check out XtremeAg. I'm Damian Mason. Thank you for joining us. Now we're going to take questions from our live audience. And guess what? You could have been here, but you weren't.